Hey, this is Pat. This is my third video in a response series to James Baber and his channel devoted to defeating Adventism. Let's see what he has to say.
Seventh-day Adventists like to make grandiose claims about the Bible and how they are all the ones following it. But are they really?
In this particular video, James is discussing one thing, but he's using two sources. One of them he's taking extremely out of context to the point that it's actually pretty funny. But let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
What I can find is this regarding their Sabbath. I can find commands in the Old Testament for the nation of Israel to observe the Sabbath and a penalty if they don't observe the Sabbath and observe it correctly.
All right, so there's rules and there are penalties for rules. Yeah, a disobedience to God is called a sin, and the punishment for sin is death. That's actually accurate, James. Thanks for pointing that out. Now, in this particular instance, he's looking at Exodus 31, and he's talking about the penalty of death for disobedience to the Sabbath. In this moment, they're actually putting together things for the tabernacle and things like that. The actual 10 commandments are given in a previous chapter. This is just a reiteration of the Sabbath law after God is actually frustrated with the people because they made an idol right after he actually gave them the rules. What he's not pointing out here in Exodus 31 is that after he points out that there's a penalty, he says why they should keep it. He mentions that they should keep it because he is the God who created everything. He also says that it will be a sign for his people forever. James is forgetting that part. He's only pointing out that there is a penalty for sin.
Those kind of commands and penalties are not existent in the New Testament.
Actually, those kinds of laws and penalties are in the New Testament. The penalty is death, and the laws are what we call sin, and sin is disobedience to God's law.
Seventh-day Adventism has no New Testament justification for their Sabbath keeping.
We have no New Testament justification for Sabbath keeping. That's completely ridiculous, man. There's no New Testament justification. You're telling me the fact that Jesus taught during the Sabbath? You're talking about the fact that after his death, burial, and resurrection, the apostles continued to teach on the Sabbath? You're talking about the fact that the women who went to put ointment and stuff on Jesus chose not to go on the Sabbath because they chose to keep God's law over going to the tomb? You're telling me that the Sabbath is nowhere in the New Testament, James? Come on. Work a little harder than that.
And you know why? Because we both know why. And that's because their prophet, Ellen White, agrees with me. And
this is where it just irks me a little bit more because his context is so skewed. James, I think you're great, but work a little harder.
May 16th of 1882, she said the New Testament does not reenact. In other words, the New Testament does not have a Sabbath.
Okay, that's right. She uses the idea that it does not reenact, but she does not say that the New Testament does not have a Sabbath. You're putting those words in her mouth because you say that the New Testament does not have a Sabbath, and yet I just pointed out that it does.
But it's just presupposed or assumed.
Now, the reason why it is presupposed or assumed is because there are things that we don't have to reteach. Once my dog has learned to sit on command, I don't need to reteach my dog to learn to sit on command. There are certain things in the Old Testament that were already established that are not necessary to reestablish in the New Testament. For example, the context that he completely mistakes in this article that he pulled from is the fact that this article has absolutely nothing to do with the Sabbath. It's actually 100% about tithes and offerings. It's literally titled, Will a Man Rob God? The entire article is about our first fruits, the fact that they should go to God, about our tithe, giving 10% to God. She points to all of the Old Testament examples that God deserves our best, and then closes it up with the idea that although it is not really re-explained in the New Testament and rehashed in an extensive way in the New Testament as much as it was in the Old Testament, God still deserves our best. God still deserves our first fruits. It is presupposed that he deserves those things. Just like the Sabbath. We don't have to relearn or re-explain something that is already established, James.